Hello, and welcome to Online Marketing for the Savvy Attorney, presented to you today by ALM's The American Lawyer in the New York Law Journal, and presented also by Martindale-Nolo in conjunction with Kaufman England Lind and the law offices of Ross Albers. My name is Farrell McManus, and I am the Associate Publisher of the New York Law Journal. We have a great panel of speakers today. We have Chelsea Langen, who's Vice President of Sales for Martindale-Nolo. We also have Madeline Xavier, Director of Trade Marketing for Martindale-Nolo. We're also joined by Matt Englert, who's Managing Partner of Kaufman, England & Lynn. We also are joined by Austin Andrukaitis, who's Director of Marketing for Kaufman, Englert & Lynn. And finally, we're also joined by Ross Albers, who's attorney at the law offices of Ross Albers. This webinar is the latest in a series of webinars that ALM produces discussing not only the practice of law, but also the business of law. We've partnered with Martindale-Nolo, who work with thousands of attorneys. They provide client surveys and input and provide insights on best practices across the industry. Today, we're going to be focused on how to generate new clients for your law firm. Today's agenda is that we're going to discuss online marketing strategies today, lead generation overview and case studies, evaluating effectiveness, and then finally, ethical considerations for online advertising and social. Feel free during the course of this webinar to submit questions through our webinar platform. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end of the discussion. Unanswered questions will be responded directly by one of the presenters to you right after the event. During the course of today's webinar, we're also going to do a couple of polls, and the webinar replay will be provided to all attendees and registrants after the event. And if you wish to contact us directly, either during or after the event, you can contact Madeline Xavier, whose contact details are on your screen right there. And at this point, I'd like to turn the program over to Chelsea, who's going to begin today's presentation.
Thank you, Farrell, and hello, everyone. My name is Chelsea Langen, and I'm the Vice President of Sales and Operations for Martindale-Nolo. I have an extensive background in lead generation across multiple verticals and have been with the company for 7 years. I'd like to start by providing a brief overview of who Martindale-Nolo is. Martindale-Hubbell and Nolo have basically teamed up to form Martindale-Nolo and provide a comprehensive marketing solution for legal professionals. Together, we provide exposure to 15 million consumers and businesses looking for legal services, and we generate over 100,000 leads each month. We offer a range of marketing options for legal professionals that includes lead generation programs across 55 practice areas, modern and mobile responsive websites, as well as directory options on lawyers.com, martindale.com, and nolo.com. All right, let's go ahead and start with an overview of what the legal marketing universe looks like online today. So Martindale-Hubbell released a report showing that 76% of consumers go online to look for an attorney. That's a huge number. And Google reports that there are approximately 110 million searches each month for keywords related to attorney, lawyer, or law firms. So there's a big need for legal services for consumers and businesses looking online. So ask yourself, how do you stand out from the 1.3 million attorneys in the United States, and of which 500,000 are solo and small law firms? Well, thankfully, unlike the days when you only had print advertising, like the phone book or referrals to rely on, you now have many ways to connect with consumers and businesses looking for legal professionals. Today, it's virtually impossible to grow your law firm organically or through referrals or word of mouth. And law firms really must participate in online marketing. So today, we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of those marketing options available to you. First, I'd like to quickly share with you results from a 2014 survey that we did asking 300 of our attorney clients what their best performing online marketing initiatives were. And here, as you can see, the top 3 results were lead generation, SEM, and SEO. And for this webinar, we're going to go ahead and focus on the top 3. But I think that this is actually a great time for a poll. So if you wouldn't mind letting us know, what are your top 3 online marketing efforts today? Which ones are working the best for you? You should see a poll question on the slide presentation, so if you wouldn't mind taking a minute to go ahead and answer that. And then we'll go ahead and provide the answers towards the end of the webinar. Great, thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing the responses to that poll question. All right, so where do you start, and what really are the golden rules for marketing your law firm online? So one, unlike like any portfolio, you should really diversify your marketing spend, and choosing one vendor or one approach is really a mistake. Two, make sure you have a mobile responsive and professional looking website that has a clear call to action and a lead form for consumers to easily connect with you. Three, make sure that you start out with a clear understanding of what your target cost per acquisition is and track your return on investment. I can't stress that enough. And don't forget to account for any time it takes you to manage your marketing efforts. Austin and Ross will be touching on this later in the webinar, providing some real-life examples that are some really great information, so looking forward to that. And four, have realistic expectations. As the old saying goes, you get what you pay for, so if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. All right, so let's dive into some of the most common ways people are connecting with legal professionals online today, and we're going to start with SEO and SEM. Search engine optimization is more commonly called SEO, and it's really a technique that helps generate visitors to your website from organic listings on a search results page. And basically, SEO helps the search engines find and rank your site higher than the millions of other sites in response to a search query. And search engine marketing is called SEM for short, and it's paying for advertising on a search engine. Some people also refer to this as pay-per-click advertising or cost per click or CPC advertising. And many savvy attorneys are using both of these marketing efforts. However, I want to caution you that while the names sound very similar, the time it takes to see results, the cost, and really the time it takes to manage these programs are quite different. SEO can take 3 to 6 months to see any results, and basic SEO is required to be found in the search engines. And while basic SEO is something that anybody can do themselves, it's very simple, advanced SEO is really needed to rank highly for most search terms, and it can be cost prohibitive for many law firms. It requires a large commitment by you, or it's going to require you to hire some staff to manage it in-house, or outsource it to an external vendor. So while the clicks are technically free from SEO efforts, there's still a cost associated with that, so I think it's really important to point out. And with SEM, the results are much faster. To create an SEM campaign, all you need to do is select the keywords that you'd like to show up for, enter the cost per click you're willing to pay, set a budget, and enter your credit card information, and boom, your ads will potentially start to show up online. So it's pretty simple. However, while I'm oversimplifying this quite a bit, it does show you how easy it is to get started. However, I must warn you that while this can be an effective marketing channel for many, the cost per lead can be quite a bit higher than other marketing efforts that you might be participating in, because you're paying each time somebody clicks on your ad, and that click to your website doesn't guarantee that the visitor is going to pick up the phone or fill out the contact form on your website, and I'll get into that a little bit more here shortly. So while there's a lot of acronyms in online marketing, and it's really easy to confuse SEM and SEO when you're starting out, there's an easy way to help remember the differences between the two, and that's really by the last letter of the acronym. So it's helpful to think of the M in SEM as M for money, because you're paying for clicks. And the O in SEO, you can think of as O for organic, because you're showing up in the organic results of the section. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the anatomy of a Google results page, and I'm going to start with section 1 here. So the top 3 results and the 8 down the right side of the page are reserved for SEM ads through what Google calls their AdWords program. And it's as I stated earlier, it's a quick way to get your firm promoted in a visible location on the results page. regardless of how relevant Google feels your website is for the search term that was entered. However, you may have to pay a hefty price to be there, and I'm going to give you some examples of keyword prices here shortly. Section 2 is where Google displays a list of local results in their map, and these are technically part of the organic listings as well. But to get listed here in this section, you need to sign up for a Google Plus and a My Business account, which is free, and it's definitely something that I suggest everyone do as part of their SEO strategy. And finally, in Section 3, you're going to see the organic results section. And these are really the results that Google determines are the most relevant for the search term that was entered. And it's where you can see if your SEO efforts are paying off. All right. So earlier I talked about basic SEO and that anybody can do it, which is true. So here I'd like to show you how the basic SEO is used in the search results. So for basic SEO, you need a title, which we call the title tag. And as you can see, it's displayed on the top row of each search result. And here the title tag is, will you need to hire a probate lawyer? A meta description is just basically a brief overview of the page's content. You'd also like to have a search-friendly URL, which not only makes it easier for the search engines to understand what the page is about, but it also makes it easier for the person scanning the search results page to quickly identify whether or not your page is relevant for them. Next is heading tags, which helps you divide up the content on your page. And I'd like to point out that oftentimes your first heading tag is going to match your title tag, and that's okay. You're not going to get penalized for that. And also don't forget to create internal links, which are just basically links to other relevant pages within your website. I'd also like to mention that Google bolds the keywords in the search results to match the search term used, which can improve your click-through rate. And really your click-through rate is one measure that Google uses to refine their results. Okay, so SEM, if you remember, is generating visitors to your website from paid advertising. And there's 11 options to show up on that page. Your rank is really based on two things. It's the price you're willing to pay per click, and then also how many people click through on your ad. So before you start, I mentioned earlier, you need to have a clear understanding of some metrics, and in addition to those, you also need to understand how many visitors to your website are actually picking up the phone or filling out a lead form. So that helps factor in what your target cost per acquisition will be before you start the program. And finally, make sure that you set a budget. SEM can get really expensive very quickly, and while there's some great prices on keywords, the average legal-related click costs somewhere between $10 and $100 per click. So I'd like to end my segment with some recently published keyword prices. It may not surprise some of you that the legal keywords are some of the most expensive out there, and the prices for keywords can really vary between the search engines that you're advertising on. So I'd like you to have you ask yourself, would you be willing to pay Bing $69.07 each time somebody clicks on your DUI ad? Or, can you pay Google $47 to have the opportunity for somebody to visit your website when they search for the term attorney? All right, everybody, thank you for your time. I'm now going to turn it over to Madeline Xavier, who's going to break down the differences between lead generation and directory services. Welcome, Madeline.
Thanks, Chelsea. And hello, everyone. My name is Madeline Xavier. I'm the Director of Trade Marketing at Martindale-Nolo. As Chelsea mentioned, SEO and SEM are definitely important, especially as you're starting your new law firm or creating a new website for the matter. But these approaches can take 3 to 6 months. So my question to all of you is, what do you do in the meantime? Do you wait and pray for business? Believe it or not, I've actually talked with a lot of attorneys who actually believe it does take a while to start your business, and in some ways it does. But I say you don't need to wait. Let's talk about some services to help you generate new clients right away. The 2 services I'm going to talk about are lead generation and directories. We believe you need both of these. And mostly I'd say to create the volume you need a large number of leads to actually close your first deal. Now Ross and Austin will both tell you about their experience with this, how many leads they think they need to actually close the number of new clients they need each month to run their law firm. And these services allow you to get these new leads faster than SEO and SEM definitely. And most importantly, all of us have a number of contacts in our database, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't work those, definitely do so, but eventually you'll exhaust those leads, and you'll need to reach out to more, and that's exactly what lead generation and directories are going to offer you. So let's move along and talk about what you're actually buying when you hire a lead generation service. You're buying the leads from consumers who are requesting or needing legal help. What happens is leads will come to a website that is owned by the lead generation service. So each lead generation service owns a number of websites in their network. So the Martindale-Nolo network, for example, has nolo.com, lawyers.com, and each of those websites, if you look at them, have a form in there for people to come to and fill out if they are wanting to talk with a lawyer. You are actually getting that information they submit. There are two types of leads that you can buy into. One is a shared lead, which means that that lead is actually delivered to more than one attorney. An exclusive lead, as it sounds like, is delivered just to one attorney, one lead to one attorney. Now, one thing I want you to pay special attention to is the actual fee structures. There are a number of fee structures. We find the most common one is a pay per lead, so you only pay for the actual leads you get. But there are flat rate structures and a number of other pay structures, so beware of what you're actually paying for. And believe it or not, I've talked with a number of attorneys who really don't read their contracts. I know that doesn't sound realistic, but make sure that you understand the length of the contract and your obligations. There are some contracts that are multi-year ones, and you're locked into that. So not to say that those are bad, but I want you to make sure you understand what you're signing. And then lastly, lead generation services also offer you a number of additional services, everything from pre-qualification to handling the prospect once they've actually signed on and making sure that, streamlining that process of intake, to serving as a virtual receptionist for you, whereby they're going to help you make sure that the calls that come in for you are handled promptly. And in a later webinar, we'll talk about best practices as well for making that, how important that is. So moving along, let's talk about directories. There are actually a number of opportunities for buying into a directory page. In this example here, I'm showing the sponsored listings. They show first on any search results, in this case here, in this example, Las Vegas bankruptcy lawyers. If somebody is looking for a lawyer in Las Vegas for bankruptcy, the sponsored listings will show at the very top. Under that, we have a number of regular directory listings. And then finally, ads. So a lot of directories also offer you an opportunity to buy into these ads. So beyond that, each of these listings will also offer you typically an online profile, as the example here shows. Beware what these online profiles will offer you. A lot of them offer you free online profiles with a certain amount of information, but you will be required to pay additionally for some premium features, as this one shows here, like email or actually connecting to your website. So again, great, get a free online profile, but make sure you know what else you have to pay for to make that client coming to your directory listing or to your profile actually connect with you. So moving along. One minute, folks. Let's talk a little bit about how the directory service actually works. So just like when you would set up your own website, A directory gets its lead sources from a number of either organic searches, SEM, paid advertising, or with Nolo.com as an example, direct visit to the directory site, Nolo.com. The lead comes in, they're looking at the search results for DUI attorneys in Maryland, and they click on one of the listings, which in this case is Ross Albers. And if they want to get in contact with you, they will, but their phone number is presented there, a way to contact you, and or they might go to your profile and to the website to check you out a little bit more. So a few considerations here. Again, know exactly what you're paying for. Charges are based on different things, everything from the click-throughs to your website, searches to either directory page or an estimate based on how many searches will come to your site, visits, and also think about some of the dependencies here. If the click-through is coming to your website, it's your responsibility to make sure they contact you. So let's go talk a little bit about what's important on a website. There are a number of things here that we'd recommend if with services that are going directly to your website here. You want to make sure that your phone number is up and prominent. You want to make sure there's a simple form as shown on here. And as Ross is doing, he's offering a free consultation. We call that the call to action, a reason to actually contact you. Articles, blogs, testimonials, these all work to engage the prospect and make sure that they find out a little bit more about you. And then lastly, I'll just talk a little bit about, you might want to think about doing this yourself or hiring somebody, a professional designer. It really depends on your skill set. A lot of younger attorneys I find have fun using Weebly or Wix. There are a number of do-it-yourself type websites out there, but like everything else, time and cost are constraints. So think about that as you're deciding how to develop your website. Moving along, lead generation. Okay, so just like with directories, they get their sources from a number of ways. Organic searches on Google, search engine marketing where they paid for it, and they also tend to work with affiliates and other lead gen providers. As it shows here, the lead comes into a site with a form, just like we showed earlier. They fill out the form, they submit it, and you get that lead. So a very succinct process. And just to note, some leads are actually delivered to you via dashboard. So again, find out exactly how you're getting that lead. It's very important. You want to make sure you get that lead in the fastest, real-time way. Some considerations. Think about the info actually provided. So what are you actually getting in that email or on the dashboard? Ask them about the lead sources. What sites or companies are they actually getting the leads from? And then, of course, price and contractual obligations. Again, make sure you know exactly what you're paying for and how long. And do they offer a credit policy, something to ask them about, and reporting. And now I'd like to hand you over to Ross, who will tell you about his experience with lead generation. Ross?
Thanks a lot. Hey, guys. My name's Ross Albers. As you can see, I'm a solo practitioner. Used to be a prosecutor here in Baltimore City. 2 weeks before I got married, I told my wife I was quitting my job and starting my own law firm, and she still married me. And here I am about 6 months into it. For me, the biggest challenge was a budget. I really sort of had no budget, had no idea what to spend because I didn't have a salary, didn't make any money at that point, right when I was starting off, and had a limited business experience as well. I had come from a small law firm which was very big into websites and spending money on Google AdWords, like has been previously mentioned, and I just knew that from talking to other people, I couldn't compete with guys who could spend, $5, $10 grand a month on Google AdWords. I just did not have that type of budget whatsoever. So what I did is I just Googled or Binged DUI attorney and sort of looked to see what the top results were after you got past all the ads. And of course you had sort of the known DUI attorneys here in Maryland who would pop up pretty high. But what I found was there were these other websites, DUIlawyers.com or what have you. And I clicked on those and I realized that it was sort of a service essentially, one of those being Nolo. And I decided that might be the better route for me to go. I actually tried several different services, Thumbtack, eLocal, and I found Martindale-Nolo to be the better one, quite frankly, because the leads I were getting were just higher quality, people who actually were wanting to retain an attorney versus just looking for free information, people who actually had cases versus people who were just asking sort of random questions like you might find on something like Avo or along those lines. Kind of to go back to, it been mentioned as sort of about a website. I do all that myself at this point, being a solo practitioner. Again, I just don't have the budget to spend hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars to pay a company to build a website for me. And if you're somewhat tech savvy, you can do it, and it pays off. One of the things I do is buy up a lot of URLs for, Frederick County DUI attorney, Harford County, all sort of the DUI attorney things around Maryland, buy those up, create a website, and really be active on it. Do a blog. You can knock out a blog in a half an hour sitting on your couch in your living room watching Monday Night Football and drinking a beer, and it's quite easy, and it pays off. It really does. So if you want to kind of go to the results of how I've done so far, what I've really found is, quite frankly, you've got to be quick, you've got to be fast. The leads come right to my cell phone, to my email. They also come, obviously, to that dashboard, but usually for me it's the cell phone. I get that message saying you have a new lead. I immediately call that person, ask if they have time to speak, introduce myself, and then I think the most important thing to do is ask them what questions that do they have. Oftentimes, attorneys like to talk a lot about ourselves, but we forget that we're providing a service for someone else, and they have questions. So I always started off by asking, what questions do you have, and go from there. Also, in terms of the email, if I don't get an answer by the phone right away, I follow up with an email. I also follow up with a text message as well. Most of the time, the people are pretty responsive. In fact, I'm so quick, and I think that's the key to it all, is I've had people say, I just got off the computer, and after they've submitted the lead in. And I think that's a big key to my success with it. The other thing for me was really the cost of it all. Talking to other providers whose names I won't mention, but they wanted 1-year commitments for X amount of dollars a month. And to me, that just seemed too risky starting off on my own. I just didn't know if I would still be out on my own and having my own business, who knows, 30 days after I started. And for me, signing on to pay money every single month for a year just wasn't the right fit for me. The other thing I like too is you could create the profile, which would essentially, not to get too deep into SEO and things like that, but you could upload, your website's link to your profile, giving you a backlink, just things that make search engines take you as more legitimate as opposed to other sites. Also, I wrote an article the first time when I first got started with Nolo, got quite a bit of reviews. It's just another platform for you to write more blogs, essentially. And I think you'll find when you're out on your own, every single day there's different questions or different experiences or things happened. And that's really what I draw from, to just write a quick 500-word blog or 500-word article. This happened in court today. This is the question. This is the issue. And I think when you have that go-to article, people read about you, and then they're more likely to check out your profile. What I would also recommend in the beginning when I was out on my own, making no money, was, well, I'm going to be the lawyer that does everything. I'm going to do some family law. I'm going to do bankruptcy. I'm going to do all this. And as I got busier and busier, I realized I didn't have time to figure out how to do family law or figure out how to do bankruptcy law, this, that, and the other. And really, I think if you can focus on one area in the beginning and then diversify later, I think you'll be happier, you'll be more successful, and quite frankly, you won't feel like you're just spinning your wheels burning through leads. When I initially did Nolo, I was also doing personal injury leads as well, and those obviously are a lot easier to sign up than a DUI or criminal cases because the person doesn't have to pay you any money up front. I'm assuming most cases, if not all PI, are taken on a contingency basis. And for me, that was just whoever could get there the quickest, whoever could provide the best service, they were going to get that lead. But for me, being a solo practitioner, I couldn't take on 100 PI cases and all the background work that goes along with that. So I dropped that off, and I think you find that your money will go a lot longer if you don't decide, well, I'm going to do every type of law. Really focus on one area. Talking about some of those other services I use, I found that the quality in the leads just weren't that great. I lost a couple $100 doing a program where the leads were coming in, every day, 5, 10 leads, but they were all junk. And I spent more time weeding through the junk than I did focusing on quality leads where people were actually going to pay me money to be their attorney versus just asking me for free advice. In terms of the lead conversion and all that sort of stuff, I'm so new to it. I'm still figuring it out. I don't even know what the numbers are in terms of what I have to meet in order to make it worthwhile for me. But I know at this point it definitely has been worthwhile. And like I said, you've got to be quick to it. One of the first things I quickly figured out was, no one knew who Ross Albers was. I wasn't a known commodity. People weren't coming to me to be their attorney. So I needed to find out other ways to have exposure, to be in front of those people. And Nolo was one of the ways that, clients were basically brought directly to me. It was my job to sort of sell myself and answer their questions. I'll end with an example. About 2 weeks ago, I came out of court. I got the text messages of about a new lead had just come in. I immediately called that person as I was walking to my car. Person had DUI. I said, well, I'm free this afternoon. I'm free right now. Where are you? And they said, oh, I'm here. They were about 30 minutes from me. And I said, well, I can meet you at this location. Sure enough, that person turned around, met me, and basically within an hour of having the lead come in, I had closed the deal, signed up a new client, and it was all because I was, willing to, I don't want to say the word aggressive, but I was willing to, go out there and hustle. I think that's the best word for it. So my experience is when you're out there on your own, you got to hustle. This is a great way to make it an efficient hustle for you. And at the same time, I think if you are willing to buy into it, it'll definitely pay off dividends for you. I'll also, note that it was always tough for me. I would think every lead that came in, why aren't they have to sign up with me? Why did they go with someone else? As you do this, you're not going to get every single case. You're going to lose some. People are going to pick other attorneys. But, it feels good when you do get a new client. With that said, I'll pass it on to Austin now, who has a lot more experience than me in the whole lead generating and advertising campaigns, and works obviously at a much bigger firm than I do. I don't know how you can't, me just being one person. And I'll let him really get into more of sort of the conversion and what you need to spend in order to make money. With that, I'll pass it on over to you, Austin.
Thank you, Ross. My name's Austin Titus. I'm the founder of Attorney ASAP and marketing director of KL Attorneys. I have 12 years experience generating leads in various industries. I've helped generate over 100,000 legal leads, which have produced about 20,000 cases. On the next slide, I put together some tips for creating an advertising campaign. So some of the motions you should go through really before you decide on which lead provider you really want to go into. So defining your campaign, the first step is to go ahead and set the expectations and decide on which area of law and which type of cases you really want to generate. This is important because, if you want to go ahead and start a family law campaign and say you're bringing in divorces, but you're really looking for child custody or vice versa, there's different price points. So really setting yourself up for success is to understand what really you're going after and what the price points are before you can really start a campaign. The next thing I like to look at is set a target. How much volume can you really handle? Can my firm handle 50 DUI cases? If that's not the case, I'm going to go ahead and overspend for leads that I'm really never going to get to, and that's going to go ahead and skew my cost per acquisition, or hinder the campaign where I really think it might not be successful. Once I know what my target is, I like to set a cost per lead and a cost per acquisition. So usually I'll go ahead and meet with the managing partner and understand, how much do we charge and how many man hours really go into a case. So once I understand that, I can go ahead and break it down and say, can I afford to spend $100 per DUI case? Once I, calculate that, you look at the cost per acquisition and say, can I afford to take 6 DUI leads and convert 1 sale out of it? If you can do that, you might be spending $1,000 to generate 1 case, and, not sure how your firm's set up, but you might not have much margin left to really make money while you're doing the work and spending your time talking with the client and going through the motion of vetting out 6 leads, setting those consultations, and bringing people into the office. The next thing is know what you're paying for. Don't fall for the sales pitch. I get calls all the time with advertisers that have a great story about, I can generate tons of leads and all of them are great, but that's not always the case. So understanding your searches, clicks, and form fills and phone calls is very important. Each of these has a different model when you really look at the outcome of what's going to come out of the campaign. So many companies will sell you on what fits them best, but searches don't equal clicks, clicks don't equal form fills or phone calls, and form fills and phone calls don't equal qualified leads. So, really making sure when someone's selling you a new product that you understand what you're going to get out of it and how much time and effort you're going to have to put in, and really at the end of the day, how many leads do you really think you're going to produce. Once you understand, some of the basics there, you're going to go ahead and you want to make sure that you track and record your campaign as much as possible. I know everyone is busy and doesn't have time to build Excel spreadsheets to really understand everything, but, for example, if you're buying form fills, you want to write down how many of those form fills did you actually get a hold of. Of the people you got a hold of, how many of those are really qualified? Once you start getting an understanding there, it'll help you understand, is that campaign successful at the end of the day? The next tip is considering the conversion factors. A lot of people want to blame advertising companies before the results really come in, and understanding how much time and effort they really put into it. So, law firms or, sole practitioners, they need to make sure that if you're going to start a campaign, you're going to fulfill everything possible to make sure that campaign's successful. Because if you're missing a phone call or you're not calling a form fill for, 6 hours after it came in, this day and age, most people want on-demand products where they really, can go on Google, search for an attorney. If that attorney doesn't pick up, there's another attorney right there willing to take their call. So, don't point any fingers, as you're getting the campaign started. One of the highlighted points, and Ross mentioned this, is, he hustles. And how quickly are you contacting these people? Are you waiting until tomorrow, or are you calling them right from the start? Once you get through that and you feel that you're calling these people right away, it's, how many times are you following up with them? There's many clients that come through, our firm where, they might fill out a form while they were at lunch, and you give them a call back while they're at work. And if you don't follow up the next day, or, potentially later on, letting them know you have a consultation available, you're not going to monetize all the leads that are coming through, and then that's going to skew your advertising campaign, and you're going to think it's really not cost effective, but you might be the one that's really hindering your ability to succeed here. On the next slide, evaluating your campaign, I went ahead and highlighted some of the most popular legal services that are out there. A is directories. Directories are, you're listed on a page about an area of law with a bunch of other attorneys. Most consumers have the option to click on anyone they want. So remember that searches are not leads or clicks to your website. So I went ahead and broke it down kind of how I calculate what your cost per acquisition is, once you're taking some of these leads. So if you're buying 1,000 views on a bankruptcy page and you're paying $2,200 for it, probably 10% of those are actually going to click to your website. So you're going to get 100 visitors from your 1,000 views. And of those visitors, you're going to engage about 7%. And 7% is the industry standard, and not everyone starts out there. So don't take that with a grain of salt. But once you go ahead and intake, say 7% of those leads, you're only going to find probably 5 are qualified, and you're going to retain maybe 25%, which is going to leave you with the cost per acquisition at $2,200. Hopefully you're doing something besides bankruptcy where you can charge more than that $2,200, or you're going to be in the red the first month. Service B, I put down pay-per-click. I'm sure everyone's heard of that, and we've mentioned this earlier on in the webinar. Pay-per-click is where you're advertising on a keyword. I used $30 as an example of a keyword, how much you would pay per click. So if I wanted to generate 100 clicks to my website, it cost me about $3,000. Remember, the clicks aren't always going to be leads. So again, I put down you're going to engage 7% of those people into contacting you. Of the 7, you're going to have 5 that are qualified. Of the 5, you retain 27%. You're going to end up with a $3,000 cost per acquisition. This isn't in all cases. The keyword prices vary depending on what type of terms, and depending on the area of law, you can make $3,000 cost per acquisition profitable if it's a PI case or something that's a higher value. Service C, which I put down, is pay-per-lead. So we've spoke about this in the webinar as well. It's one of the campaigns that I do a lot of work with. They come in as either form fills or direct phone calls. The form fills, are emailed to you, or they're listed in dashboards. There's a number of ways you can really receive those. When you're paying per lead, you really need to remember that the contact rate is going to become a big factor. All the form fills, and I've bought tons and tons and tons of leads from many different companies, and I find on average you're probably going to end up contacting 50% of the leads that are coming in. So if I'm going to go ahead and buy 100 leads for $50 a lead, I'm spending $5,000 on the campaign. Remember, all the leads aren't necessarily qualified. So in reality, I only spoke with 50 clients, and of those potential leads that are coming through, say 75% are qualified. Most lead providers do a pretty good job of defining what area of law and really run specific traffic at those. So most of the time you find once you get a hold of someone, it's usually someone that's looking for that type of area of law, that service. So if you get a hold of 75% of the ones you contact, you're probably going to retain 25% of them. Of the ones you retain, you're going to get 10 deals out of that. So it comes down to $500 cost per acquisition, which isn't bad. They all vary depending on how much you're paying per lead. I used all these as examples. The contact rates, again, they're examples. If you have a website that really hasn't been mobile friendly or doesn't have the form fills or call to actions, you're most likely not going to convert it to 7%. So that's things to remember. At the end of the day, you can make all these types of lead campaigns successful. They really just take tracking and understanding and really spending the time to monetize everything and put your foot forward. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and pass this off to Matt.
Okay, last but not least. So my name's Matt Inglet. I am the managing partner of Kaufman England Lynn. We just call it KEL. People in Florida know us by KEL. We rarely use the full name. We've had the firm now for about 15 years. We are a larger firm. We have brick and mortar in every major market in the state of Florida. We represent only consumers. We don't have corporate clients. We practice in every major area when you consider a consumer's needs. So that would include bankruptcies and divorces, personal injury. We do some criminal, mainly DUI stuff, what I call light criminal. Bankruptcy, I think I already said bankruptcies. Also, we do a lot of foreclosure, obviously, we're in the state of Florida, so foreclosures are still a pretty good area of practice, so we still do some of those, but those have been going down. So I want to talk a little bit, kind of about the marketing stuff, and I'll touch a little bit on a little bit of what Austin also spoke about, and I'll really give you, Austin is obviously very technical when it comes to this stuff because you have to be. You're spending your money to, at the end of the day, get cases. But I'm just going to give you my perspective because at the end of the day, we have a budget and we spend that money and we have to account for it and we have to know that it's generating enough legal fees so we can all pay our employees and make money and be profitable overall. So the first thing I have on here is it talks about referral fees, and let me just go ahead and lump up referral fee, the sharing of legal fees, and also what we call lawyer referral services. As far as referral fees and the sharing of fees, when it comes to this, you just want to avoid anything where it appears as though you're paying somebody for giving you a case. That's why most of the lead providers sell you leads, because they're not selling you cases. They're not saying that if I send you a case, I want X amount of dollars for that case. They're saying I'm going to send you somebody and you're going to pay for this person. They're interested in hiring an attorney to do a DUI. So anytime you have an arrangement with a company or an individual and they want you to pay them on a case-by-case basis, you want to stay away from that, especially if the amount you're paying them varies based on how big your fee is. So if the person says, if I send you a $1,500 case, I want $300, and if I send you a $2,500 case, I want $500, then you want to steer clear of that. Because things like that in companies like that, and I've been in this business for a long time now, they're typically fly-by-night, and they're just trying to make some quick money, and they're just going to get you into trouble. So stay away from anything where the arrangement is like that, or even if it's close to something like that, you want to stay away from it. Lawyer referral services. Every state is different. You need to be very familiar with what your state considers to be a lawyer referral service versus a directory, because they're different and there's different rules for each. And you also need to be familiar with what your state requires of lawyer referral services. I know in the state of Florida and also in the state of California, if a lawyer referral service wants to sell you leads and send you leads, they have to be registered and approved by the state bar. They also have to follow certain rules, so you have to make sure that they are. Just because somebody's calling you and saying, Joe Smith and I work for this company and we're based out of, let's say, Illinois, and we want to sell you leads, we sell them all over the country, blah, 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 here's what we charge. Don't just assume that they're registered as a lawyer referral service in your state if your state requires that. I can't tell you the amount of times I've had salespeople contact Austin or myself to try to sell us leads, and I ask them if they're an approved lawyer referral service, and they say yes. I then hang up the phone and call the bar, and they say no, they're not. So you're held liable for making sure that these lawyer referral services that are trying to sell you leads are following all the rules. And if you don't and they're not, you can get in trouble. And I've seen that happen before. So be careful about that. So the next thing I want to talk about is advertising do's and don'ts. The first thing I have on here is don't use images to draw that draw a lot of emotion. Not that they're not always effective, but I just think that in the long run, those things are going to end up hurting you more than helping you. And I'll get into why I say that when I go over another example. The other thing is don't write advertisements as advice. I mean, lawyers, you know this. Every case is different. So make sure you use your qualifiers. If you feel like, let's say you're doing a bankruptcy ad and you feel like there's a big swath of potential clients that have the same problem, then it's okay to identify that there are certain people that are struggling with this problem, and here is a possible solution. But use your qualifiers. Do you notice how I say possible solution and that some people struggle with this? We call them in my firm qualifiers. You always want to make sure you use qualifiers so that you don't get accused of saying that you can do something for somebody without knowing really what their situation is. It also ends up, anytime you sign up a client, you want to set the right expectations, right? And if you start out by getting them to call based on expectations that may be false, then you're already going down the wrong road with that client. That's going to result in what? A refund, a bar complaint, so on and so forth. The other thing that you need to stay away from, and I know this is very tempting, but stay away from giving the best possible outcome as the probable outcome in every case. Let me give you, for instance, I know in Florida we've gone back and forth on being able to run personal injury ads where we say that, you know, I got this client $1 million settlement or a $2 million settlement. We are allowed to do that now as long as you meet certain requirements. But nonetheless, I think that attorneys should stay away from, and that's just an example, but stay away from presenting the best possible solution as the probable solution in every case. That's just going to result in you having to give a refund, getting a bar complaint, and just a bunch of upset people with bad reviews on the internet and so on and so forth. So I always tell attorneys, and I've learned this the hard way. Not that I've run ads like that, but I've certainly run ads where we present good outcomes for certain clients, and that does create, it puts something in the client's head which says, I know they're telling me that I may not get this outcome, but I know they got it for somebody else, so there's a good possibility they can get it from me. And you don't want to start out that way with a client because, as you know, the best possible resolution is not always the most probable. So the do's. If you're unsure about your advertisement, submit it to the bar for approval. But remember one thing, just because the bar approved it doesn't mean you can't get in trouble for it. I know that sounds crazy, at least in the state of Florida. They're just opinions. They're giving you opinions on whether or not you're following the rules of advertising. But that doesn't mean that someone can't file a bar complaint against you, another attorney, and then you get in trouble for it. So if it's borderline and you're not sure, then don't do it. I mean, how much business is it really going to generate for you to jeopardize your entire practice and career? The other thing, confirm lead generation and affiliate are following the bar rules and the advertising guidelines. So not only do you have to make sure they're registered with your state, if your state requires that as a lawyer referral service, you also need to ensure that they're following the rules of advertising in your state. A lot of attorneys don't do this because they think, oh, well, they're selling leads. They're registered in my state as a lawyer referral service. Certainly, all of their stuff is legitimate and I have nothing to worry about. Well, that's not true. Many times, and I don't want to say many times, sometimes lawyer referral services don't always follow the rules in your particular state. You need to make sure they do because it's on you. you can't blame the lawyer referral service. You're the one who's held liable by your bar. The other thing you need to do when you're advertising is, and this is what I tell a lot of young lawyers who are just starting out, distinguish, and this is something you need to think about. You need to look at your competitors in the area of practice that you're in and the geographical location where you're located, and you need to figure out what makes you better than them. Why should Joe Smith hire you over another attorney? Why are you better than them? You have to be able to distinguish yourself from your competitors. The other thing you have to be able to do is you have to have a good call to action. So not only do you distinguish yourself, but you have to have a call to action. I can't tell you the amount of attorney ads I see and hear where, number one, they don't distinguish themselves and they have no call to action. It's just a little blurb about how wonderful they are. The next thing I would, real quick, let me wrap this up, but the next thing I wanted to touch on is make sure you have a message where you can connect with your clients. Make sure that your message, you do it in a way where you can connect with the client that you're trying to connect with. Think about what they're going through and try to come up with something that you can connect. People understand that. Your clients will understand that. And then last but not least of all is make sure you know your cost per acquisition. I know it's hard, but you need to make sure you know if you're spending a certain amount of money every month and where it's going, what is it costing you to get a case? Most lawyers don't know this, and they end up wasting their money on marketing. Make sure you know how much it costs to get a case.
Okay, terrific. Thanks, everybody. Those have been fantastic presentations. As we move on here, I wanted to first sort of go over some of the poll results that we had here. And we asked all of you, what are the top 3 performing online marketing initiatives? And if you take a look at your screen right now, you see with 51%, it's SEO, followed by lead generation, and then followed by directories. So once again, if you take a look at your screen there, you'll see some of the information on the poll questions that we posed to you, with SEO being the top, being really your top online marketing initiative. Which actually leads nicely, I think, into our Q&A section. We have a number of questions that we've received from all of you who are listening in today. I have a question first that I would like to shoot over, if I could, to Austin and Ross. And we have a listener here who says, do you suggest realistically competing with sites like Avvo and LegalZoom, you know, especially become attractive to younger, more tech-savvy generations, i.e. those sites offer lower cost, they don't have to deal with attorneys, et cetera. So are you suggesting that our listeners today realistically try to compete with those sites? Either one of you.
I guess yeah, sure. This is Ross. I guess I'm a little confused as to the question in terms of, you know, competing as in for leads or things like that, or competing as, you can just go to Avvo or LegalZoom to get your legal questions answered for you. I'm kind of assuming that that's maybe the question. That I'll say, I use Avvo, I'm signed up with that, and, you know, I get questions and you can answer them. At the end of the day, though, you know, when you have a question on the weekend or late at night and you're not sure about something, you're going to need to talk to an attorney who knows what he's doing. Believe me, I've tried in the past to do things on my own, and I find sometimes you end up just making a bigger mess than if you just hired or talked to someone who actually has the experience doing it. I suppose, nowadays people are, the younger generation, everything's sort of online, but, you can't bring an iPad into your criminal court hearing in district court and defend yourself with that. You have to have an attorney there with you.
I will add one thing. This is Farrell McManus again, and I will add that I've actually had 2 or 3 conversations recently with attorneys who've actually said that they're actually starting to make money from some of the messes that they needed to clean up from people who used independent sites or sort of semi-self-help sites. I have a question for Austin, if I may.
Yep.
Austin, is getting a prospect to fill out the contact form, is better than a call or a click? In my experience, the listener says there is no particular advantage to forms over other contacts. They still need to be qualified.
Well, they still need to be qualified, but you know, if someone fills out a form, it doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna speak to that person. So the best is obviously a phone call or an in-face meeting as you're building that rapport with the potential client. So you know, if someone clicks your ad and fills out the form, it doesn't mean that you're essentially going to even talk to them. So of course you still have to qualify them, but speaking with the person or meeting with them face-to-face is obviously the best.
Okay, terrific. And Ross, just for the heck of it, did you have anything in your own experience that you'd like to share about that, or not really?
It really is. It just depends if they're a legitimate lead or not. I mean, I have people submit contact forms to me, and they turn out to be good cases. And then phone calls, maybe not so much. I think you just have to have both. Some people, maybe are a little scared or nervous to just kind of call up the attorney and talk to them, and they'd rather just sort of do a dialogue at their own pace over online or email. And I've started leads that way and ended up closing the cases that way too.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great. This is interesting. I actually have a couple of questions here for Chelsea. Chelsea, for you, we have a couple of folks who've asked questions of you during the course of your presentation. The first is pretty straightforward in terms of how are you defining lead generation?
That's a good question. So by definition, lead generation is just really collecting contact information and names from a prospective client. So technically, your website generates leads. But when you're talking about a lead generation marketing program, kind of like the one we were talking about today that we offer, essentially we would be the ones generating those leads for you. And the way we do that is a consumer would come to one of our websites. They would answer a few questions related to their specific area of practice that they need legal help in. We would collect their contact information, and then we would send that information over to you, the attorney, so that you could review it and then reach out to the prospective clients on your own. So, lead generation programs are great because they really allow you to get in front of consumers that you may not be reaching with your own marketing efforts today. Or maybe you just don't have the time or the staff to actually put an effort towards generating your own leads. And in addition to, maybe you're not generating enough through your own marketing efforts, so you can use lead generation programs to supplement your own marketing efforts as well.
Austin, did you want to hop in on that at all, or Madeline? Anybody?
Go ahead, Austin.
I mean, there's really, I mean, for lead generation, I mean, like you said, you can generate leads from your website. So, a lead is somebody contacting you. Once someone contacts you, you need to qualify them. So, defining how leads are generated, I mean, there's a number of different ways you can do it depending on your practice. I mean, are you driving PPC traffic? Are you listed on directories? Are you doing any, mail outs? There's a number of different ways you can really do that.
Okay, terrific. Madeline, did you want to hop in on that at all, or I thought I might have heard you?
Yeah, I mean, just aside from what I presented, I think Chelsea has covered what we would define, as lead generation. Thanks.
Terrific. And I have another question here, Chelsea, first for you and for anybody else that wants to jump in. I mean, bearing in mind, I think that we're speaking to a nationwide audience here today. How do you define cost prohibitive?
This is Chelsea. Why don't I go ahead and take that one first, because I think that this was related to the advanced SEO portion that I was talking about. And the reason I mention that is there's a lot of services out there that offer SEO, and the cost is usually driven by kind of what service they're going to be providing for you. So whether it's on-page SEO, content creation, if they're doing some keyword targeting with you, and there's a lot of other options out there as well. So I've seen some programs cost as much as $10,000 per month. However, there's some great services out there that perform very well for much lower. Ultimately, you really need to decide what you need from some advanced SEO. And make sure that you have the right expectation and that the vendor is able to deliver against that expectation.
Okay, terrific. If no one else wants to chime in on that one, we have even more. This is a particularly engaged group today. One of our listeners here was actually posing the question during one of the presentations, if anybody would like to speak to this one. It's about logos, and somebody asked, our firm website has a client representation list. Do we need permission from the client to list their name and include their logo? And I'll throw that up to the group, anybody who might want to be able to chime in on that.
Sorry, can you restate that question?
Sure, apologies, yes. So the question is, the listener asked, saying that their firm website has a client representation list, and they're asking, do we need permission from the client to list their name and include their logo? Or is that probably a case-by-case basis, do you think?
Yeah, I think maybe a Matt would be more appropriate to answer something like that.
Right. I mean, I would say check with your state bar association, and it certainly never hurts to get permission before you post anything online.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say check with your state bar first.
Right.
And if you're not sure after reading the state rule on it, most states have free hotlines where you can call in and get an answer. So do that. But even if the state bar says it's okay, I would still get their permission anyway, just to be safe.
Gotcha. So extra caution is the main word on logos, I think. So I've got a question here for Ross and for Austin. Do you still do any offline advertising, i.e. print, billboards, bus signs? So, the more traditional sort of, print, outdoor, et cetera. What do you think of those?
It's been something that I moved away from probably about a year ago. This day and age, and I'm sure you can still drive business with it, but a lot of the stuff I've seen in the past, you really want to do print and billboards either to, your brand awareness, or you have a new product or service that isn't something people know about or can search about. If they're looking for a divorce, they're not going to call probably the sign they see on the side of the road. They know they need a divorce. They're probably getting online. They're probably talking with their friends. They're trying to find another way to do it. So it's been something where we've moved away from it and have thrived.
Yeah, I don't do any of that. Quite frankly, I think nowadays people are searching online. I think you're better served spending your time asking clients to write reviews about you and your service, than worrying about where your billboard is. I think I've gotten more cases just because people say, "Oh, I really love your reviews that you have online." And after every case, I ask client for a review, write me one. I just think everything's online these days. I don't do the billboard stuff. I don't do any print. I'm in a rural community here in Maryland, Carroll County. I think it's a little bit more old school. There are some attorneys that still do the print stuff. But for me, being a young guy, I think that's a perfect situation for me. It means that I can basically go out there and own sort of the digital world around here. So no, I don't really do any of that.
Okay, terrific. And Ross, another one here for you. When you're starting out, how much budget did you allocate to marketing, and where did you spend it, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so I didn't have in my mind a set number of this is what my budget is monthly for advertising. I just kind of did it by feel. If something felt really, really expensive to me, then I wasn't going to do it. And if something felt like more reasonable, you know, putting $1,000, $1,500 into it, you know, maybe $2,000, then, you know, I could take that on and sort of play it out and see what happened. So for me, I will say, you know, one of the things I've learned is if you want to make money, you got to spend money. So the thought process of I'm gonna, you know, buy a URL on GoDaddy and build a website for $50 on Weebly, and, you know, I'm just going to start making all this money, it's not true. So, you know, you go out, you spend $1,000, maybe you turn it into 10 grand. And I sat in a meeting with, you know, a different marketer, advertiser, sort of pitching me on their business. And I didn't end up going with them, but he had a good point. You know, if I walked up to you and said, if you give me $5, I'll give you $100 right now. So that's a no-brainer. Who wouldn't do that? And I think you have to kind of look at that way in terms of the online marketing and the advertising and spending the money. You know, of course, you got to track it and see if it's actually being successful. But at the same time, you do have to spend money in order to make it. For me, my budget was just what felt right for me, what I thought I could handle. And being so new to the game and just sort of figuring it out, I think as I get busier and busier and start to grow, you know, I can sort of decide, okay, well, this is what my monthly budget is for this amount.
Okay, terrific. And as a follow-up, actually, to that, if you don't mind, would you do anything differently?
I mean, I wish I hadn't lost $600 with the one company that was all a bunch of junk leads, but I think I made, you know, I may have got one case out of there and got my money back. I don't know, maybe. Would I do things differently? You know, when you're a solo practitioner, you have to be willing to dive into the deep end. You know, if you want to put in one toe at a time and slowly just kind of sink to the bottom, then, you know, I don't know you're going to be successful. I don't think you need to go out and start spending $5,000, $10,000 with a monthly budget of that. But I think you do have to just suck it up and say, all right, I'm going to give this program a chance. I'm going to hustle. I'm going to really go after these leads, and it'll pay off. So for me, it would be, you know, seeing the results I see now, you know, being more willing in the beginning to be like, all right, I'm going to do this.
Okay, great. I have a question here, and we are getting close to the end here, but I do want to ask this of Ross, of Austin, and of Chelsea, actually. And what percentage of your business now comes from referrals versus online lead generation?
For what I've seen, probably 5%, but I mean, I think our situation is a little different than some of the other law firms that are out there. I mean, I'm sure the smaller guys, a bigger portion of their business really comes from referrals. Ross can probably speak more about that.
I would say most of it is probably from the lead generation programs. But at the same time, I'll tell you, you know, it amazes me. You get one client, you do a good job. 2-3 months down the road, that client recommends their neighbor to you because they just got a DUI or they got a criminal case or they got in a car accident. And I think the referral stuff for me will slowly pick up and become more constant as I grow in my practice. So right now, I would say, you know, the majority of my leads in my business, one being a panel attorney for the public defender's office or a bar attorney, whatever you want to call it in your state. I get a lot of cases that way. But, you know, for the DUI stuff, it's mostly the paid leads. But also, I spend time on social media, Facebook, posting stuff. I'll tell you the biggest secret out there is Google+. If you're not using that, you're
Really?
stupid to be. Yeah,
wow.
I mean, honestly, people kind of put that off and think no one uses it, which is true. But listen, I go and I post every day on Google+, and then I'll search on my phone, you know, DUI attorney or whatever I've kind of posted, and it's in the top 10 searches. I mean, it shows up. Google uses that. So yeah, you know, for me, the lead generation is the majority of my business, but I'm starting to slowly see it change over. I use social media. You definitely want a Facebook page. You want Twitter. You want all of that. And the biggest secret out there is Google+, and most attorneys aren't using it.
I did not know that. And Chelsea, you wanna wrap us up with this last question?
No, I think Austin and Ross answered it really well. You know, we work with a lot of attorneys over here, and it really varies from my experience firm to firm. You know, it can go as high as, you know, 25% of their business comes from online marketing efforts related specifically to a lead generation program. But ultimately, you need to make the decision as to what the right mix is for you, and just understand that over time, it's going to change. As your marketing efforts start to pay off with SEO or SEM, you might dial back your lead generation program, or vice versa. If things are starting to slow down with other initiatives, you ramp up another way. So you just need to think of each online marketing effort as a lever that you can pull as needed.
All right, that's perfect, and I think that's a perfect way to end this discussion. I want to thank all of our panelists really for a terrific discussion today that I think was really educational. For those listeners who did pose questions we didn't get to you, we will get to you offline when we have a chance. We had a large number of questions today. Obviously, as you all can tell, this is a tremendous topic that generates a lot of interest. For those of you online, I do encourage you to view the additional resources slide in front of you. And also call to your attention our next webinar on December 9th, Attorney Best Practices for Retaining More Clients. Until then, on behalf of ALM, I'd like to thank you all for joining us, and have a great day.